Guys, let's get ready to rumble. You remember that phrase out of boxing, let's get ready to rumble. Well, in this case, I'm talking about the video platform Rumble, and also more broadly about the coordinated strategy that is now emerging on the right. Let's remember the left coordinates. You see the ways in which they coordinated to go after Parler, but they also coordinate to build an infrastructure that they can then use, play off each other. They coordinate with censorship, for example. Well, the free speech platforms need to coordinate as well, and that's starting to happen. Let me talk a little bit about Rumble. Interestingly, Rumble wasn't started as something, cooked up by our side. Chris Pavlovski, the CEO, the founder of Rumble, is a Canadian guy. And he noticed that Google, in setting up its monetization schemes, was prioritizing the so-called big content creators, people with millions of followers. Google could easily monetize them. And Chris Pavlovski said, you know what? There's not a good platform that allows smaller content creators to monetize. Artists, people who teach you to play the guitar, people like that. So Rumble was created for the small content creator. Then, when these big tech companies began to practice sort of vigorous censorship, big conservatives began to move over to Rumble. In fact, I was invited by Rumble to come join, and I did early, and have built a big platform on Rumble. If you don't follow me on Rumble, please go to Rumble and subscribe to my channel. It's a good way for you to support my work. And also, by the way, Rumble has acquired Locals, which is also a creator content channel. And check me out at Locals. I'm at dinesh.locals.com. I remember having a conversation early on with Chris Pavlovski about free speech. And he made a sardonic comment to me. He goes, hey, Dinesh, I knew you Americans were fighting about the Second Amendment. I didn't realize that you were fighting also about the First. And I think what he meant is that, look, there's maybe a reasonable debate to be had. This is kind of the Canadian point of view. Maybe a reasonable debate to be had about guns, Dinesh, but why are we arguing about free speech? Don't we all agree in the West that free speech is a good idea? So then I knew that Chris Pavlovski is a good guy on the free speech issue. And so Debbie and I have sort of allied with him and allied with Rumble. We've even invested some money in Rumble because we want to help build up these platforms, build up these alternatives. Now, Rumble recently is, like the Trump platform, gone public. They've gone public through a Wall Street group called Cantor Fitzgerald, a very sophisticated investment company. And the beautiful update is that Rumble, which is now allied with Locals, is coordinating with the Trump platform. They're going to work together. And what that means is that the Trump platform is going to be using the infrastructure of Rumble. And this is great because you don't want the Trump platform to be dependent upon the left. If it's dependent upon big tech, if it's dependent upon the Amazon servers and the Google search engines and the Google advertising consortium, then those guys would be able to wound, if not take down, undermine the Trump platform. So our technology has got to be independent of their side. And it looks like we realize that and we're starting to build it on our side. Now, the Trump platform is already worth $1 billion. Rumble, I'm happy to say, now has $400 million of cash and is valued over $2 billion. The reason this is important is because if you look at the monetization, if you look at the market value of YouTube and Facebook, they are gigantic. They're astronomical. They rival the gross domestic product of countries. And so you can't compete with somebody who's operating in the multi-billion, trillion-dollar realm and do that when you have, I got $4 million. No, you need to compete by hiring the best tech people. You need to upgrade the features on the platform. It looks like Trump realized that. Certainly Rumble realizes that. And so we're beginning to get in the game. We're still a long way behind, but we're beginning to do that. Now, I was a little disturbed. Debbie actually showed this to me. At a kind of diatribe from our own side against Rumble and against Trump. The Trump platform this is from Mr. Torba, Andrew Torba, the CEO of Gab. And Andrew Torba is a good guy, by the way. I had him on the podcast several weeks ago. He's a Christian guy. He set up this platform. It's a good platform. I'm on Gab, and I want you to join Gab. I think Gab is a worthwhile platform. But he says in this comment, he says, quote, "It's being reported that a gang of grifters around President Trump raised $1 billion from a bunch of satanic hedge funds." Wow. And then he goes, "This is a product with no public product, no users, and no revenue." And he goes on to say, the second big alternative grift story comes from the anti-free speech Canadian video company Rumble. And he goes on to say that Rumble bans hate speech and bans anti-Semitism. And he goes, quote, "Gab is the only true free speech platform on the internet." So I just want to address these points because they seem to me wrong-headed. First of all, it is true the Trump platform hasn't launched, but it does have a huge asset. His name is Donald Trump. Remember that Donald Trump on social media had well over 100 million followers. If you add his Facebook and his Instagram and his Twitter, this is a guy with a ready-made audience. So it's not surprising to me that there's a market value for a platform that is about to be launched, even though its product isn't yet on the market. Its product is actually living and breathing and waiting to jump into the platform as soon as it gets going. Now, what about this business about Rumble? And this could be also said about Getter, it could be said about Parler. They're sort of not free speech platforms because they do have some restrictions on speech. Look, I think on the free speech issue, we are not trying to make a point about free speech absolutism. We're not trying to say, hey, listen, we want every form of porn to be available on the internet. Hey, we want people to freely be able to use the N-word and all kinds of racial epithets. That's not what we're fighting for. We're not fighting for the restriction of obscene speech on the margin. We're not talking about the banning of epithets. What we're talking about is the restriction of legitimate debate, the kind of debate that must occur in a democratic society. We want to have a debate about climate change, and we want to have a debate about the trans issue, and we want to have a debate about voter fraud. We want to have a debate about all kinds of issues, but we can't have that kind of debate, and that's why these platforms exist. So this seems to me to be a bogus point. If Gab wants to say, well, we allow all that, we're going to be the true free speech platform, be my guest. I'm not opposed to that. But neither am I opposed to platforms that restrict racial epithets and restrict pornography, but allow all kinds of legitimate argument to occur. That's the kind of argument that we're fighting for. That's what we mean. And I think that's what the founders meant when they stood up for free speech.